What's going on, everybody? Today I have another video for you. This is one that I've shown a couple of years ago, but a lot of new people have joined the channel and it's one of my favorite exhibits. As you can see behind me, this is the Hall of Wax Presidents here at Historic Auto Attractions Museum. And today I'm going to show you one of my favorite Abraham Lincoln exhibits that is around. They have so many unique items that I think you're really going to get a kick out of. So let me take you in there and we'll take a look. Now the Lincoln exhibit is just over here, but we have to stop and take a look at a couple things just on the outside of the exhibit. Now this is a presidential chair. It says this chair was used by Abraham Lincoln in his presidential rail car. As you can see, this chair is pretty worn. And over here there is a funeral dress for Mrs. Frances Blair. Looks like this was worn at the funeral of Abraham Lincoln. And over here, this is really interesting too. This is a dress and shoes worn by Mary Todd Lincoln. And it looks like this was originally on loan from the Stevenson County Historical Society. But that is absolutely awesome. And get a load of how small these shoes were. That is just crazy. Now in we go. This is the Lincoln exhibit, and this is just one of many, many exhibits. This museum is almost 80,000 square feet, and I've shown you longer tours, and I've shown you various exhibits here, but this place is just phenomenal. Ford's Theater as it appeared in 1865 when President Lincoln was shot. And here is a mock-up of the playbill. He was seeing Our American Cousin, starring Laura Keene. This here is a reproduction of the chair that Lincoln was sitting in that fateful night at Ford's Theater. Now the original chair is at the Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. But this is a reproduction of what the chair he sat in looked like. And just over here is the drapery cord from the Lincoln home in Springfield. It was just a couple months ago I took you to the Lincoln home, so if you haven't seen that video, that's worth a watch. But if you think of how many times Lincoln would have touched this, pretty neat to be that close to history. And this is a tribute carriage. It says built by the Wood brothers in 1864. It transported President Lincoln and his wife Mary Todd on that fateful trip to Ford's Theater, April 14th, 1865. So this is a tribute of the actual carriage. Now the actual carriage does still exist. I believe it's at the Studebaker Museum in South Bend, Indiana, and I'm making plans to go and see that, hopefully within the next month. So you will see that on the channel coming up. And just over here are some of my favorite Lincoln relics that exist anywhere. Now here is try to get a better view of it, but this is a section of the carpet on which Lincoln stood during his second inaugural address. So this carpet was obtained by Ben Perley Poor in Washington, and the remainder was destroyed in the fire in Indian Hill in 1959. This is a section of burial cloth used in Lincoln's funeral service. Now this is one of the most fascinating things here. This is a group of 6 handles from Abraham Lincoln's actual coffin. His original coffin did not fit in the sarcophagus, so that was scrapped. These handles were hung onto by Herbert Wells Fay, and he was the caretaker of the Lincoln tomb for a long time, and he was also kind of a notorious historical artifact pack rat. He held on to a lot of items that ended up going up for auction, and a lot of private collectors ended up with some really interesting Lincoln pieces, and several of them ended up here at the museum. And the other one was this right here, and this was one of the coins that was placed on Lincoln's eyelid after he passed away. Just think about that, the history that this has seen. Here's one more of the Deathbed Relics. This is the bloodstained handkerchief that was wrapped around Lincoln's head after his death to keep his jaw closed until rigor mortis set in. As you can see, the blood is right there. People used to hang on to relics back then. Anytime that somebody notable would pass away, and this happened with John Dillinger and all kinds of different people, that people would dip handkerchiefs and whatever else they could find into blood and they would save them. Now, these are bandages that were around Mary Surratt's hand when she was hung, and bits of rope from Surratt, George Azeroth, Payne, and Harold's hanging ropes. These were the conspirators. And over here, well, here's the doorknob that came from the house on H Street. It was where Mary Surratt was at. It's kind of neat. And over here, this is one of the other more interesting things. Manacles worn by Lewis Payne. I believe he was actually also known as Lewis Powell, but one of the conspirators. Those were the actual manacles that he wore. It's kind of crazy that some of this stuff still exists, but I'm really glad it does. Now, just over here is a White House chair that was from Lincoln's personal study. Hopefully you can see that with the glare on there, but obviously this chair has seen its better days. Very old chair. Doesn't look very comfortable, but I would imagine back then, with the options that you had, there certainly weren't any lazy boy sofas or anything like that back then, so a lot of things were made of horsehair. And over here, there is a window frame from the home of Abraham Lincoln's law partner, William Herndon. Now, William Herndon didn't have always the highest opinion of Lincoln, especially when he was a law partner with him, because he would bring his kids into the law office and basically let them run amok. And that drove William Herndon crazy. And Herndon also was not a fan of Mary Todd Lincoln. He did write a book and didn't paint her in the best light. Here are some uncut $5 bills from the U.S. Mint. That's pretty neat. And here are a couple of Civil War artifacts dug from the battlefields. Now, if you visit any place like Gettysburg, there are a lot of dealers that will sell things like this. It is illegal to dig up relics on the national battlefields, but you can purchase these from a lot of people that there are a lot of people that live near battlefields that will do excavations and sell things to dealers. But things like this are available for ordinary collectors as well. Just over here, we have the personal razor of Abraham Lincoln and a personal spoon of Abraham Lincoln's. And I was told that this one was stepped on by a horse at one point back in the day, which is why it looks the way it does. And in this cage over here, or this case, this is Mary Todd Lincoln's black mourning fan. And her mourning veil. And even her mourning skirt. Says she wore this when her son Willie died in the White House in 1862, and then again in 1865 after Lincoln was assassinated. It says Mrs. Lincoln gave this dress to her friend, Mrs. James Knowlton of Chicago. And this to me is one of the more interesting things here. This is a 35-star flag. Now, this was the 17th flag design used on July 4th, 1863 to July 4th, 1865. Now, during the time, this was used during the time of Lincoln's administration and the Civil War. This flag belonged to a guy named, it was MSS Master Sergeant Smith Stimmel, and he was a bodyguard and a flag bearer to President Lincoln, and he was present during the Gettysburg Address. And this was found in his possessions after his passing, and it's very possible that this was the flag flying behind Abraham Lincoln when he gave the famous Gettysburg Address. Now just think of that. It really sets you back. Now, hopefully you enjoyed that tour through the Abraham Lincoln exhibit here. They have such a fantastic array of memorabilia here. This behind me here is the carriage that carried President William McKinley's body during his funeral. And I'm surrounded by presidential limousines and presidential cars, historic artifacts, everything else. So I will do more from this museum as time goes along. And there's also going to be a lot of good videos coming up from Los Angeles, from various cemeteries, all kinds of stuff. There's lots of trips planned right now to bring you guys a lot of new, interesting videos and a lot of places that I've never seen before. So stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day, everybody.